Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about starting up a new political party. Now, it's a big issue today because the globalists control the entire political scene pretty much. If it wasn't for presidential primary candidate selection in the United States, we would never see someone like Donald Trump getting up. The party machinery would control everything. But because there is a higher degree or a greater degree of citizen level participation, then someone like a Donald Trump is possible, or a Ron DeSantis or whatever. But outside of that, where the globalists completely control pretty much the entire political landscape, certainly control all the parties that even have the slightest chance of being part of or forming a government in the Western countries. The globalists control all of it. But and any attempts to start up a new political party to represent the people, or more broadly to oppose the globalist program, the globalist project, then the globalist machine, the state, the deep state, can effortlessly infiltrate these parties, these political parties, these startup political parties, and undermine them from within, turn people against one another, install activists to inform to the security service. So pretty much every organ of government will be turned against new political parties. The security services, the secret services, undercover operatives, and all sorts of things. So they're able to pretty much make these parties ineffective, or have them all squabbling with one another, or set them up for embarrassing media moments and so on. So that these political parties hardly ever got off the ground. Now, part of the reason for this is that you don't know who your people who believe in your agenda and wish to follow it. How do you separate them or tell them from the Secret Service agent who's been sent to undermine you and fuck you up in every way they can? And again, vast resources, we put it, there could be, in some cases you've got political parties where they may have, 50 people working there, 30 of whom are fucking Secret Service agents and informers and so on. That's how bad it is. Because it's very hard to tell someone who believes in your agenda. If you're starting up a new political party, this is for the citizenry. We believe in reducing mass migration, for example. The citizenry, we believe in reducing mass migration, for example. Even not teaching gay, lesbian porn into junior schools. We believe in removing affirmative action, have merit-based education and employment. Now, that immediately puts you totally at odds with the globalist machine. The globalist machine controls the Western governments, and then you'll be singled out. This new political party, Trump, will be singled out for ruthless attention by the Secret Service, and all the organs of the deep state will be out to destroy you because you're potentially a threat to the globalist project. And again, it's very hard when you're picking people to be the party secretary or this or that. How are you 100% sure that they're really on board with your program, that they are supporting your the policies you want to put forward? Now, in a democratic, a free and fair election, democratic state, this shouldn't be an issue. The security services, the state services shouldn't be coming after you. But that's not what we live in now. We live in a globalist-controlled ideology. Then they can get you, and there's almost no way you can get off the ground. So then they'll embarrass you. They'll set you up for some sort of illegal act, so the FBI can swoop in. There'll be kilograms of drugs will appear in the lounge room of the most influential member of your new political movement seconds before the police come in the front door with a warrant, and all this sort of stuff will happen. They will get you. Now, why are some parties, new political movements, successful and some are not? So let's look at the farmers' political movement in Holland. Now, I know, a year or so ago, the Dutch government, the then Dutch government, completely controlled by the globalists, by the way, were implementing, or in the throes of implementing, a fertilizer reduction program, and I think they were going to reduce the amount of fertilizers by, I can't remember how much, it was a third or a half or something like that. And that would have in effect put Dutch farmers out of business. Now, Holland is actually a huge exporter. You wouldn't think. It's one of the top exporters in the world of foodstuffs. A lot of it processed or agricultural, I guess. They, for example, they produce billions of dollars worth of flowers. I didn't know this. Billions of dollars, not just a few hundred million, but billions of dollars of flowers, which are exported all around Europe and even to Asia and places like that. So, tulips and all sorts of things. And they've got quite an intensive sort of growing agricultural system around that. It takes quite a lot of fertilizer, so nitrogen consumed there. They also are a massive producer of dairy products such as processed cheese, and they've got a vast array of cheese. It's very much in Dutch culture. There's a huge array of cheeses, fruit cheeses, savoury cheeses. There's a whole range of things. A lot of them are very good, by the way. I've tried them. So they export many tens of billions of dollars worth of processed food and flowers and pork products and so on. So those industries are fertilizer intensive, or some of them anyway, fertilizer intensive. So that would have cut across those. So the farmers decided to act politically, form a political party, and they were quite successful in some of the elections around Holland. Certainly shook the place up anyway. And I think they definitely played a role in the vote, the large vote that the party of Geert Wilders, the success he had in the just recent federal elections in Holland. It's quite possible he could be the next Dutch Prime Minister. We can only hope. He's very opposed to mass immigration, by the way. Now, why was the Farmers' Party successful? Well, they organised at the local level, and everybody knew who the farmers were. Everybody knew which farmers were not on board with the Farmers' Party and which were not. And everybody knew, all the farmers in the local had known each other for years. Many of these families, by the way, have been farming for generations. They didn't just start farming yesterday. And so everybody knew everybody at the local level. So it was very hard for an outsider to penetrate that and to get in there and disrupt. Now, if a Secret Service agent did manage to somehow bullshit their way in the door, then they would be very quickly found out, because again, everybody knew each other, everyone understood each other's values and attitudes and views on things. And so an agitator or someone who's been difficult would stand out. Somebody who was trying to play people off against each other and sow seeds of disruption, they would stand out. Somebody who was trying to play people off against each other and sow seeds of disruption, they would quickly be seen and they could be ejected. But only because it was were all built around or all coalesced around an occupation, in this case, of course, farming. And that made it very hard for the globalists and their agents and their disruptors and so on to get in there and fuck up the pay. They certainly tried, but it was just very hard for them to do it. And again, unlike a broad citizen appeal party where it's easy for the globalists to stick their stooges and disruptors in there. We can look at other parties as well that are built around for example, say the Labour movement that was popular, that began to take off in Britain in the early or late 1800s, particularly the early 1900s. And not long after they'd started, they were successful in forming government in Britain in the 1920s. The government of Ramsay MacDonald, the Scottish Labourite, he was able to form a Labour government or a left-wing, certainly with some views that you'd say wouldn't be out of place in a Marxist debating club. But how are they able to do that? Because again, there was the authorities saw the labour movement as being a threat to capitalism, all sorts of things. They sort of being much more a threat than actually was, but nonetheless, and they were in there trying to cause all sorts of trouble. But these were working men, in particular, that were doing everybody. Again, they were organising at the local level, so they knew each other. They knew that they'd all been coal miners or, I don't know, factory workers, that sort of thing. Everybody knew or knew someone that knew somebody. So to put secret agents and agitators and stirrers and disruptors into that, it was possible, but much harder. And they would be detected much earlier before they could do the damage that they were being sent to do. So again, this building around a class or an occupation or kids, mass migration, all these sorts of things, anti-whiteism, the hatred of white people, the corruption of the electing and voting system. I mean, they rigged the US presidential election, for Christ's sake. They are powerful if they can do that. And the amount of people they could bring on board to do it, for goodness sakes. So when you've got a broad appeal party, it's effort easy as 1, 2, 3 to get agitators, disruptors in there. And as long as they think they have the right to prevent other political parties from forming, that problem, the deep state and the globalist deep state, think they have the right to prevent all competition to their monopoly on power, then which is in itself a real problem, by the way. But as long as they have that attitude, then they'll be attempting to do that, and will do so successfully for any party that attempts to have broad appeal to the wider citizenry. So only single issue parties can come up. So I think the challenge to globalization has to come from single issue parties, but many of them who combine politically to pool, if you like, their votes or the seats or districts or whatever that they win, to oppose and stop the globalists. I think it's only going to happen only around single issue and single occupation can there be that sort of control over the people that are coming into the party, and then the disruptors and the agitators, deep state agents, can be kept out, or at least again identified and removed before they cause the disruption they've been paid and sent to do. So if you look at, say, in the case of, well, Holland's a good case actually at the moment. I wouldn't call Geert Wilders' party single issue, but they've got a couple of issues that mass migration has got to go, and Muslims that do not integrate or assimilate have to go. So I don't think many people would disagree. The globalists would disagree, of course, but I don't think many sensible people would disagree with that. So that's given Herr Wilders that I think he is quite by far and away the biggest political party in the Dutch federal parliament. And then I think the Farmers' Party won something like 10 seats, give or take. So if you add, say, another few other single issue parties, Herr Wilders will come close to forming majority government just with a collection of single issue parties. That doesn't mean there won't be horse trading going back and forth of, well, I'll concede this and I'll give you that, and that sort of thing will still go on. It's politics, for goodness sakes. But just through the gathering of the single issue parties and bringing them together in this case a coalition, of course, could very, very well bring a majority, and bring them together in this case a coalition, of course, could very, very well bring a majority. And this is, I think, the direction we have to go in the rest of the West, where there is not a primary selection process for candidates as there is in the United States, because this allows outsiders to come into the system. Not that they won't be opposed and vigorously opposed by the deep state as Donald Trump was, but it still allows that still opens more doors there, and is overall in many ways more democratic. In the Western system, where we rely on the party machines, and the party machines in turn creating the politicians, then it has to be single issue parties only because they can protect their integrity, and then they come together to form majority. I think that's the future direction. Now, also, if we look at the original concept of, certainly in Britain at least, the original concept of parliamentary representation is you would be represented by somebody from your local area who'd lived there all their lives, who knew that everybody knew, and that they would then be sent to the federal parliament in London, Westminster, to represent your district. Now, that's all changed. The party machine now decides all the people. Most of the people in the electoral districts have never even lived there for one day or 1 minute, let alone all their lives. So people are being parachuted in purely on the basis of the head office party machinery, which is completely controlled today by the globalists, making all those decisions. Who's a good little globalist or who's too stupid to bother about, as long as they're given baubles and trinkets and that sort of stuff. So the integrity of the election system and the candidate selection that once existed, and what parliamentary democracy was built around, it was built about you sent someone you'd known all your life to represent you to the parliament. That's all gone, and so now we have to rethink parliamentary integrity and the integrity of democracy and its fundamentals. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.